I'm Matt Booker.
I'm Dave Laird.
I'm Jim Gauer, and this is the Concavity Show.
Oh. Hey, Jim Gauer. Welcome
Welcome,
to
welcome back.
episode 92 of Concavity Show. We are so excited to have you back on the show with us. We spoke to you in, if you can believe it, May of 2019 for episode 47,
My God.
which is almost like half our show's lifetime ago. Maybe a bit longer than that. So super great to have you back on to talk about the 10th anniversary edition of Novel Explosives.
Thanks, David.
And the book, for those of who haven't read it, is celebrating 10 years with also a new introduction to the book, a new edition, new introduction by Joy Williams. Jim, for people who don't know, your bio is pretty short on the back of the book. It just says Jim Gauer is a mathematician, published poet, and possibly the world's only Marxist venture capitalist, all of which comes up in the book itself. I would say there's some mathematics, there's some talk of poetry, and there's a lot of talk of venture capital and Marxism as it relates to that. But for people who aren't familiar with the book, let me start with asking, how did Joy Williams come to write the introduction to this new edition?
Yeah, that is sort of an odd story. She, for reasons I'll spare you, Harper's Magazine has been sort of good to my publishing house, Zero Gram Press, and they have offered quite a lot of free advertising, and for whatever reason, they seem to like to advertise novel explosives. And so Joyce saw an ad for the book and decided she wanted to read it. All I got was a note from Ann Kielberg at Book Post. At the time, I think Book Post had, it's on Substack, and it had maybe two or 300 subscribers, and because it's like $50 a year or something to subscribe, and people don't really like to pay for stuff on the. And so, in any case, I had no idea who was going to review it, so I just sent the copy off, and then I got invited to do a talk at the William Gaddis conference in St. Louis at Washington University. And they were in the process of sort of installing a bunch of new Gaddis materials there in the archives at WashU, where Gass's work is also stashed. And so I thought, it'd be fun. I'll go off, and I did a talk on JR that I'll spare you. But anyway, the first day of the conference, I'm sitting up front, and somebody who's, I don't know, one of the things about these conferences that kind of drives me nuts is that people will just like read their paper aloud. It's like, you know, you just send us the paper, and then we could read it, and then you could talk about it. And in any case, I got up to go get a glass of water, and I hear this woman yell, "Jim Gower, I can't believe you exist." And, and it was Joy, and she like jumped over three people and like hugged me, and I never even met her before. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
it was obvious who it was. I mean, nobody else wears those sunglasses, like prescription sunglasses she uses, because her eyes are super sensitive to light. And yeah, it was sort of a odd way to meet her, but uh, in any case, Joy and I have become really good friends, and we've done a lot of traveling together. And she's really also close with Meredith, my wife. They were both brought up by ministers, and so Joy and my wife can talk Bible for hours, and Joy and I can talk books or, environmental problems, that sort of thing.
And
But
she wrote the review for Book Post, right? Like that came after
yeah,
you met her.
right. So, I exactly. And she gave me a copy of the original review, which was like 4,000 words. And Book Post cut it down to 750 words. So I'm the only one who actually has the original review. It's sort of a crack up. But anyway, Joy's just an amazingly generous person. Yeah, I
And
love her.
I was
Love
lucky to get to see you share the stage with her at our 2024 David Foster Wallace conference, in which you sort of engineered that event to happen, which was really incredible for me. And you and I, Jim, have talked about novel explosives at several different conferences and podcasts, and I got to be honest, I don't remember the details of all of those conversations, so apologies if I'm repeating myself today. In my mind, it's all
How
sort
dare
of
you?
one big ongoing conversation. And for people who haven't read the book, I mean, for one, I really love this book. As I've been revisiting the 10th anniversary edition, I'm just blown away at what an achievement it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things I want to ask you about, starting with the structure, because for people who haven't read it, there's sort of three main narrative threads that are going on, and they sort of interweave and move back and forth. And there's a lot of moving parts. So my question for you is, how did you keep all of that in your head in the time to get all of that down on paper?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did have an entire outline of the book, which was on one side of a 3 by 5 index card. So, no, in fact, so a brief story to the beginning of writing it. I wrote a first novel called The Nigerian Scam that I still have on my computer. And I consider that kind of a practice novel. It took me 3 years to write. And I figured I was sort of done. And it's like, I was just sort of trying to prove I could write a novel. The only reason I started writing again, by the way, was I always thought of Roberto Bolaño as a poet. I tried translating some of his work from the 80s, and I, open up a magazine and see, God, Bolaño wrote a novel. It happened to be Savage Detectives, and I said, well, if Bolaño can write a novel, I might as well try. So I, you know, ended up started writing again, and anyway, I figured I was finished. This was a Friday, and then the next morning I woke up with sort of Alvaro's voice in my head, and basically the opening few sentences, and then just continued writing. I think I probably wrote maybe a 20 or 30,000 word blast of prose pretty quickly, and then I had to sort of decide whether I was going to finish the book. I mean, part of the story here is that I was really writing it to entertain an old friend of mine, a great writing teacher named Howard Stein. And Howard was a truly good reader. And so the problem of keeping Howard entertained was, I knew if I wrote a single lazy sentence, Howard would just kill me. So, I had to really, yeah, let's say work at it. But Howard didn't see any of that initial blast of stuff, and I sort of had to decide whether I was going to continue to write or not. And what had happened is that the characters of Raymond and Eugene, who were in the third person narrative strand, had just sort of entered the book. And I remember sitting outside on my balcony, deciding whether I was going to finish the book or not. And I I was curious about who these characters were. They didn't even have names yet. So it's like, well, the only way I'm going to find out who these characters are is if I write them. But in any case,
700 and something pages later, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, part of the reason that I wrote literally every day, I mean, I didn't skip a single day in 7 years, was that I had the whole structure in my head. And I was kind of worried if I took even a couple of days off that the structure might fall apart. And by structure, I mean sort of the way the things are interwoven. Yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into the structure of the book. It's kind of intricately choreographed, but um, that structure was all in my head. All I had on the outline was the days of the week. As you recall, it takes place over the course of a specific week, the week after Easter Sunday and ending the following Monday, the day after what's called Divine Mercy Sunday. And so all I had on the outline was the days of the week and what happened. As I was always terrified that I was going to have, something going on a Wednesday that actually should have happened on Thursday or something. So I was constantly checking this card. So anyway,
Sounds like heavy is the head that holds the
Mm-hmm.
narrative structure of novel
yeah,
explosives.
not a good idea. Don't do that. Right,
Yeah.
just write it down. But part of the problem was I didn't want to know anything about what I was going to write until I got to it. I mean, I knew the narrative obligations of the book. I knew what the book had to do, and it but I didn't want to know, like I knew I was going to have to cover the feminicides in
Mm.
Juarez.
Mm.
There's no way around that. We're in the book set in 2009, and I mean, I was going to have to cover the feminicide, so I deliberately didn't read uh,
2666. Yeah.
2666 because I thought Bologna is going to have some brilliant way of handling
Mm.
this that I couldn't possibly have come up with. I mean, I do think he came up with a good way of handling it, though. I should say that that is basically taken from one of the books that I used for research. It was written by a journalist who kept basically a journal of the feminicides in the year 1996, I think it was, or 97, when there were 238 deaths. And it's written in that same kind of flat, objective style where it's just the kind of clothing and details and all of that around the
Mm.
bodies that Bologna used. So, yeah, but, since Bologna's, great writers steal stuff. That's totally fine.
Books are made of books.
Yeah, bad writers plagiarize and great
Mm.
writers just steal. So,
I want to go back to something you were talking about there. This thread of being curious about where the story is going as you're writing it, rather than having every single detail mapped out in advance. And it reminds me of something. I'll probably butcher the quote from paraphrase from Virginia Woolf or something, but like it's like the writer's job to listen to the story and see where it goes rather than to tell it. And it's sort of like the job to just unveil it rather than to present it, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And I see that with a lot of writing advice is really hard to follow because how do you start with that voice of like, okay, I want to be interested in this character and see where they go if I put them in X, Y, or Z situation, or how do you think about it?
well, I mean, I think, yeah, listening to the book is a good way of putting it. The I mean, let me just tell you the basic mechanics. The book was written paragraph by paragraph. That was the real unit of the book. I never went on to a new paragraph until I'd completed the paragraph I was in. And a great many of the paragraphs in there that seem simple to write took me like over a month to write. I mean, I'd have like parts of 6 different machines all over the floor of my garage is what it felt like. And, what the hell is this paragraph supposed to do? And then, it was basically just a way to give myself a writing problem to solve. And because I mean, I don't think, I think involuntary writing in some sense is better than voluntary writing. If you sort of deliberately force something or you make the writing have to do something, it's going to feel sort of forced. And I wanted the book to feel sort of effortless and spontaneously composed. So the paragraph had to feel like it was just breathed out in one breath. A lot of that was just waiting and sort of, and I'd often wake up in the middle of the night thinking, I have a solution to that. I hadn't actually written it, but it's the same way it worked in mathematics for me. I mean, it's it's sort of strange that if you get the conscious brain out of the way somehow, I mean, you have to do the same thing in sports. You can't possibly hit a baseball if you're thinking through all the mechanics of hitting a baseball. And the same thing in writing. If you're really thinking about the mechanics of how you're writing, you're just going to get in your own way. So most of it was just trying to stay out of my own way and and try to make the book feel effortlessly written. Because if the reader senses that you're really straining, I mean, the analogy I'd use is having a pianist walk out on stage you've never heard before, and they're going to play some difficult piece. And if it feels like the performer doesn't have control over it, the audience is just going to feel really uncomfortable. I mean, it's like, oh, geez, is this guy going to miss notes or what could go wrong here? So,
Oh,
it,
pianist. Oh, sorry, I missed that. You meant piano.
like
Yeah, got it.
piano, yeah.
I heard
Got
a
it.
similar
Got it.
thing, Matt, and then
Got it.
just
I
listen
was
for
like,
three
wow,
more
this is a
seconds.
great
Like, oh,
analogy. But
pianist, yeah. Okay.
no.
Sorry,
That's a funny word in the English language, isn't it? We're very mature here on Concavity Show,
yeah.
Jim. We're like
But
high literary style,
flautist wouldn't have helped you either. So,
Let me ask you about going back to the paragraph thing. Um, I've heard you talk about, or maybe you and I have talked about, the sentence as a sort of atomic level piece of the book, and I know you have some affinity for longer sentences, and like when you were consciously wanting to get into this sort of flow state of writing, were you intentionally wanting to keep adding on phrases and ideas in order to make the sentences consciously longer, or was that more of a byproduct of the style that you're describing?
well, I mean, you can probably tell from reading the book that I sort of love suspended syntax. I mean, I love the effect of, holding the syntax open and then resolving it and then sort of sticking the landing on the sentence itself. And if you can make all that work, it creates kind of a magical effect. I mean, there isn't a lot of suspended syntax in contemporary US fiction simply because the major publishers, these corporate publishers, just don't like it. I mean, they think it makes a book too difficult to read, and it really doesn't if you handle it properly. You obviously don't want to create awkward sentences, but in any case, yeah, I mean, that was just natural. I love George Eliot. I love Proust. There's all these writers that I love that use a lot of suspended syntax. So that was kind of, I don't know, I sort of built into the author that I invented to write this, if that sounds a bit
Well,
strange.
Self-invention.
Yeah.
well, it's such a big book in that, like a lot of maximalist encyclopedic novels, I mean, the book contains multitudes, and there's
Hmm.
so many themes and ideas in here that I want to ask you about. Starting with the sort of the two big threads that are on my mind as I've been rereading the book the past few weeks is the theme of war and violence and really quasi state violence from the cartels and how that is associated with the sort of amassing of weapons and power, and then some bunch of VC stuff. But why don't we start with the sort of war question? I mean, you've got explosives in the title. Talk to us a little bit about your interest in that. I know that you said, your interest partly came out of like these guys coming home from the Gulf War. Is that right?
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the book is an airing of, my own grievances about things having to do with the U.S. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been fighting the war on drugs since 1973. Like I say in the book, not a single drug has died, and we're all dying. And the other part of it was I was trying to understand like our obsession with guns. I mean, and weaponry. We have something probably if you include shadow guns, something close to 500,000 guns and automatic weapons in the U.S. I mean, it's more than one per human, even if you include kids. So I was sort of
500 million, right? Not
500
thousand.
million,
500
yeah, sorry.
million. Yeah.
Uh, 500 million guns in a population of, 330 million, whatever we are.
Okay.
You
Right.
know, what is the allure of these things? How have they become glamorized? And I mean, I knew about guns as my dad had taught me how to shoot a rifle and shoot pistol at a range. I knew how to clean them and all that, but I never thought of them as glamorous. I don't own one, and it's so part of it was just trying to understand what exactly is the attraction of these, and then
Hmm.
obviously the drug war at the time was a real war. I mean, when I went into Juarez, there were 50,000 Mexican army troops there, and you know, pretty much what happens to, yeah, for those who haven't read the book, one of the characters, sort of affectionately known as douchebag, and that's the venture capital character. And so when I went into Juarez, what happened to douchebag is more or less what happened to me, which is I was told by the person at my hotel who was from Juarez, first of all, she said, do not go in there unless you absolutely have to. And then she said, don't stop at any stoplights or stop signs because people are getting kidnapped. And it really was a war zone. And I mean, the Mexican army just invaded Juarez. And
And the cartels on one side. I know, I mean, in Texas, there's a great fear not only of kidnapping and murder and things, but just the size and power of, like, you talk about the Zetas a bit in here. I mean, their power for a while was greater than most, like, nations. Like, they had tanks and airplanes and, like, all kinds of armory and
submarines and everything.
submarines and,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
thermobaric weapons that you're talking about here. Let me ask you another question because what you said about the drug war and the gun war, all are problems along the border a lot. I mean, all over, but the border in specifically, immigration has become a big issue since the times changed. 2016 was the very beginning of Trump, right? And so 10 years
Mm-hmm.
later, we're in a different world immigration wise. And maybe could you talk a little bit about what has changed since you wrote the book?
Yeah, I was going to add to that too. Like, how has this book become even more prescient 10 years later than when you wrote it, as kind of a retrospective, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the, yeah, there's sort of I pull a sort of brief quote from the book where douchebag is at the top of the hill overlooking Colonia de Anapra, which is a section out from downtown towards the west that's extremely poor, and it's where many of the maquila workers, the maquidora workers who work in the assembly plants along the border live. And he looks down and sort of sees how it's sort of this neat grid of streets, except that it's been cut off by the fence at the time before it was actually a wall. And it talks about that, before they built the fence and declared it illegal to be Mexican. And that's kind of my attitude about it. That border used to be completely porous between Sunland Park and Anapra, and you know, Mexican children would go to school in Sunland Park, and people in Sunland Park would go shop in Mexico because there weren't taxes, sales taxes, and it used to be one big community, and then suddenly, we just fence it off, or now we wall it off, and um, I couldn't have imagined at the time that I wrote it that it was going to get as bad as it has been. I mean, the demonization of immigrants is awful, and I my wife Meredith is involved in a lot of the protest movement here in LA to sort of protect migrants. I mean, I shouldn't say protect. I mean, she is an observer in court and sort of helps
Well,
people make sure they can get reconnected with their loved ones if they get detained and all that. But I mean, we have to face the fact that three-quarters of the people who are in the States illegally are here on overstayed visas, and most of them are European, or, as long as you're white, you don't have a problem. So, but if your skin is brown, you know, you could be a U.S. citizen and get swept up in this.
mm-hmm.
And I couldn't have imagined it was going to get that bad. I should have known from the history of it that it certainly could. I mean, under Eisenhower, you know, the what was it called? Operation Wetback. There's a nice term for you. They just shipped 2 million Mexican workers back across the border and deported all of them. This is in the 50s, so there's probably a bit of a failure of imagination on my part that I didn't think it could get worse, but I don't think any of us imagined
Mm-hmm.
Trump at the time. So, in any case, um, yeah, if you left it up to me, we wouldn't have those sort of borders. It would be treated more like Canada, and but that's obviously deeply embedded in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And if it isn't clear, it should be clear that I absolutely love the Mexican people and not so much the authorities. I've been to, I think, 18 states and Mexico and traveled all over the place. And used to surf along the Pacific coast, all up and down the coast there. And, it's a great place, a marvelous culture, great food. And I don't know what our problem is. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well,
Sorry.
now
I
there's a bunch of
explaining
things.
Americans is impossible. I mean, it's just, and I lived a lot of time in France where people would, ask me to explain what's up with you guys. And, yeah, sorry, don't
That's
look.
really what I came on on there
Yeah,
to talk about today with you two Americans. It's like, what's the deal, guys?
Yeah,
what's
I
up with
don't have an
you
answer.
Americans?
You two guys are so cool. I don't know how we get such cool Americans and such uncool American leadership. What's going on with that?
To take a different tack there, I know I mentioned this on the last time we did a podcast together that I discovered the book by listening to Michael Silverblatt, and in the last 10 years we lost Michael Silverblatt in February of this year. So shout out to Michael Silverblatt, R.I.P. I also, as I was rereading this, I had highlighted in my non 10th anniversary edition a bunch of my favorite passages, and one of them is about the character of douchebag trying to get the smallest physical weight out of $10 million. Is it 10 million or 20 million?
20 million.
$20 million. And he goes through this long sort of intellectual exercise, and he sort of lands on 1,000 Swiss franc note, because not many currencies have a 1,000 denomination. And now I've just realized that in 2019 or 2020, Switzerland changed their banknotes, and so that Burkhardt is not on the face of the
Yeah.
1,000 Swiss franc
Oh,
note
well.
anymore. But talk to us a little bit about that section, because that just seems like you were having so much fun going through this idea of like, it gets almost absurd by the end of it.
Yeah, well, you know, the venture capital character has been sort of vaguely threatened. He's been involved in this business deal that seems to have some kind of shady financing behind it. He's made a pile of money off it, but it was, in fact, some kind of fraud. He doesn't know what's behind it. He has no idea that it's drug money behind it, but in any case, he's so lost the thread on what he's doing in venture capital, or it just no longer has any meaning to him, that he just decides he's going to go to El Paso and figure out what was this whole thing about. He has no idea who did it, but he so he's got to take a pile of currency, and he sort of arbitrarily comes up with the number 20 million. So there's always a problem putting money in a book because, by the time you put a
Inflation.
number on it, it's a different number 10 years
Hmm.
later. And anyway, 20 million was worth more then than it is now. But in any case, so he gets on the phone with his financial advisor and, says, I got to get 20 million in currency. And the financial advisor starts going through all the options with him. And what I actually did was to actually calculate the weights of all the different currencies you could use. And
Because
you
he
may
needs to get it 50 pounds, right, for the checked baggage allowance.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got to figure out how do you carry $20 million in under 50 pounds. And yeah, in any case, the 1,000 Swiss franc note turned out to be the lightest way to carry this. But his financial advisor goes through all these different options, like, well, if you did it in gold, it would weigh this much. And at one point he says, well, it'd be about 6 tons of silver, and the VC says, "I'm not boarding a plane with 6 tons of silver."
Seems unlikely.
What is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Rhodium? Is it rhodium
for
that
a
he
great
talks
many
about?
reasons. I don't even think I'd want to be on an airplane that was had
Yeah,
such
yeah. Have to be
levels,
like a military jet or
much
something.
less carrying it on board. But anyway,
It was
yeah, that
hilarious.
was a fun section to write, and since I knew what it had to do, it wasn't particularly difficult. But it was, yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Speaking of favorite passages, I was really heartened to see in Joy Williams' forward, she quoted my favorite passage that I read on air when we did the episode in 2019, the part about the quote from Macbeth, full of walking shadows and dusty death. That moment from page 683, I was like, oh yes, Joy found that moment in the book to be so delightful as well. That was so cool. And then she says after the long quote, pyrolized exclamation point.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Yeah, it's so good.
One thing we didn't talk about last time we talked that you and I have spoken about in the years since is some of the philosophy in the book. And I don't know that this is on record anywhere else. So could you speak a little bit about the influence specifically of Jacques Derrida on your writing and thought process, and who you think of as being sort of the main philosophical influences that ended up in the book?
Well, just to be clear, if somebody hasn't read the book, you don't need to know anything about philosophy to read the book. Everything you need to know, poetry, mathematics, philosophy, whatever, I put it in the book. You don't need, there's nothing external you need. You can just pick up the book and read it. It's not difficult to read. I mean, I've gotten more notes from people on that one thing than anything else.
Mm.
Wow, I thought this was really difficult, and it wasn't. Of course, if you want to go back and read it more carefully, then there's a lot more in there than it might appear. But um, yeah, so Derrida, I knew I started corresponding with Derrida in
Oh,
1976.
really? Cool.
Yeah, so I knew him for, yeah, like 30 years. And he was an extremely generous guy. And I probably mentioned that I lived on and off in Paris for 16, 17 years. And part of that was work related, but I sort of deliberately chose work so that I could go to Paris, and I had a lot of friends there. Most of them, frankly, were Portuguese. The huge Portuguese population in Paris. But in any case, Derrida was sort of my mentor for reading philosophy. So, you know, I had read philosophy kind of unsystematically, and I went back and just started over from the foundations and just read from the pre-Socratics and just kept going all the way through the history of philosophy. But when I read something, Derrida would sort of say, look, if you've read that, you're going to need to go back and reread this, like if you've read Aquinas, you need to go back and read Averroes and Avicenna because the Aquinas's theory of analogical language, a famous example of that is God can be said to exist only by analogy. And what he means by that is you can't speak a human language to talk about the divine or to address the divine. The divine doesn't speak a language, so if we're using human language, we're using it only analogically. And that's actually rooted in some Arab and Persian philosophers that preceded Aquinas. So that was the kind of thing Derrida would do is sort of occasionally point me back to something I might have skipped over. Otherwise, he was just an extremely generous person, and we had lunch together all the time when I
No way.
was there. I was I was the only non-academic at his memorial service at UC Irvine, and I was one of the few people at his funeral. And anyway,
Well, I had to bring that up just because got to hear a lot of your stories about it, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit while we're recording this.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't think I knew any of that.
Another thing that's changed in the past 10 years is that we've I've been involved in David Foster Wallace scholarship, running the conference, and I have long, we've had you at the conference, and have long wanted someone to write an academic paper on novel explosives, and that happened this year.
Yeah.
Which
oh,
with our buddy, well, you were there, Tony Carano
oh
wrote
yeah,
this
yeah.
paper about Disco Elysium, which is a
A video game.
narrative video game.
I play that
And
game. Yeah.
I've never played the game. I'm sure Jim Gower has not played this video
No, I
game.
have not.
It's
But
amazing. It is truly
could you make any?
Excellent,
Could you
excellent.
make anything of his paper, or what did you make of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought it was really imaginative of him to take a video game with sort of, complex worlds, and sort of draw an analogy to novel explosives, which builds its own
hmm
world or
yeah.
worlds. I mean, there are several worlds in there. There's the world of Guanajuato, which is sort of appears to be sort of self-contained, and where Alvaro lives. For those who haven't read the book, the basic premise here is that a guy wakes up in Guanajuato, Mexico, one morning with his knowledge intact and no memory of who he is. So that's sort of the opportunity cost, I'd call it, of the book. You have to sort of believe that it would be possible to wake up with your knowledge intact. He remembers the books he's read, he remembers doing mathematics, he remembers all these venture capital terms and all that. He just has no idea why he knows all this stuff or what use it was put to. And what was the purpose of all that? What was the meaning of it? And the normal trope would be the guy would then go in search of his identity. So I just reverse that. If Alvaro's sort of in his hotel room, looking out the window, watching this woman put her laundry up on the line across the
hmm
way. And he sort of imagines if somebody handed him his biography, he'd just drop it out the window. He doesn't want to know who he was. And later he comes to have reason to believe through seeing some photographs of his prior self at a party that he probably doesn't want to know the guy anyway. And so he's actually, in some sense, fleeing his prior self, not pursuing him. And in any case, what was the question, Matt?
It was just about like, hey, we finally got an academic paper on your book, and I'm
Ah,
really excited about the future of novel explosive studies, and I hope to see it integrated into more dissertations and academic journals as
hmm
well. So, anyways, I think even though the book is 10 years old, it's still very undiscovered and
Yeah.
underappreciated, and has a lot of future ahead of it in the next 10 years from here, in terms of being discovered by the academic community.
hmm
yeah, well, in order to get Joy to write the foreword, I had to promise her I'd do some more promotion for the book. So
There
Thank
you
here
you.
go.
I am. Yeah. I haven't done
Publisher
anything
obligation right here.
since 2017. So yeah, but you know, gee, Matt, do you think I could come back on the
For sure.
show?
Uh, we love
Anyway,
having the book.
yeah, just to complete, you were talking about the paper that Tony wrote, and yeah, I like the fact that he's taking, the world of video games and sort of the worlds that are created within novel explosives. The venture capital world is its own world. the world of the cartels and all the guns and weaponry is kind of and the world of Juarez is another world, and then the world of Guanajuato, which acts as a sort of retreat from the rest of that, a place the reader can sort of sit back and relax a bit and maybe, breathe a bit before it gets back to more intense stuff. And so, yeah, I like the idea of putting two different kinds of worlds
Hmm.
together. So I thought it was a great
That's
idea.
cool. In addition to the academic paper, Jim, I'm curious about how has your life changed in the last 10 years since this book came out? Like, what opportunities has publishing this book kind of opened up for you that wouldn't, have happened otherwise? What's been cool?
Yeah, I mean, the the f- the really fun thing about it, um, so I should admit that I don't follow social media, and frankly, I don't read, I haven't read reviews of my own work since I was a
Mm.
poet. That's sort of a long story, but I had some poetry in an anthology that was heavily over publicized by Random House. There were only about 14 writers in the book, and they were all really good. And my poetry somehow got singled out for praise. And, guess what else is in the book? Raymond Carver's Cathedral. And I'm like, if my poetry is getting praised and Carver's getting panned, I'm doing something wrong. And it totally paralyzed me. I mean, for 6 months, I had to totally start over with
Mm.
writing. So, yeah, I mean, Silverblatt told me, yeah, all writers claim they don't read their reviews, but they actually do read them. And yeah, I actually don't. So, whatever. I mean, I
So what does
did,
he know? Hey?
yeah, in any case, I had my own reasons for
Yeah,
that.
fair.
But in any case, one of the things that was really fun is that people would send me photographs of themselves or with friends from strange places in the world holding up a copy of Novel Explosives, like from somebody got up at the top of Machu Picchu's
Oh,
holding
no
up
way.
a copy of Novel Explosives, or the Great Wall of China, or one of my
That's
favorites was
cool.
this book club that went into Davy Byrne's pub from Ulysses. You may
Hmm.
recall the Laestrygonians chapter where Leopold goes in to have his gorgonzola sandwich and a glass of Burgundy, and so they were this big book club it looked like all of Davy Byrne's pub was full of people holding up copies of Novel Explosives and
Amazing.
pints of Guinness in the other. And
I want to be
yeah,
in that book club. Damn.
yeah, exactly. It's like I should just move to Dublin. I mean, at least people would know who I am. I, I can guarantee you there are more readers of the book in Dublin than there are in Los Angeles.
Mm.
It's just, so in any case, that whole part of the thing was that was truly fun. I mean, it was just people obviously had enjoyed the book, and that's really all I cared about. I
Hmm.
mean, the book, it's always described as ambitious and, maximalist, encyclopedic, and all this. And
Hmm.
I was just trying to write something entertaining. And the fact is, I probably just know too much stuff for my own good. And, a lot of that ends up getting into the book,
Hmm.
but I do think the book is entertaining. I think it's everything from laugh
Absolutely.
out loud funny to kind of creating some terror and menace at times.
Hmm.
And, I tend to love books that have a number of different emotional notes in them, and sort of the wider range of emotional notes you can get, the better as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
So, I tried to get as many different kinds of, I don't know, we sort of simplify emotion into that which is kind of borders on sentimentality. And emotion is everything we feel, everything from humor to dread, terror, sadness, grief, whatever, as many emotions as you can get into a book. And I suppose it was ambitious in that way, but I didn't set out to write an ambitious book. It just got that way.
This
And
is just who
frankly,
you are right here.
I mean, I'll tell you, I have to tell you something funny. My, a lot of times my daughter would come in and sit beside my desk while I was writing. And my focus was so intense that you could burn the house down around me and I wouldn't even notice. So my daughter sitting there and commenting occasionally did absolutely nothing to break focus. But at one point, she looked at the word count and said, "Dad, 387,000 words, is that a lot?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. It's probably about 300 pages, 350 pages or something." I had no idea the book was 700 pages long. So if anybody thinks I was trying to write a long book, I wasn't. I was just trying to write a complete book.
Mhm.
And so the fact that it turned out to be long surprised me more than anyone. Any other writer would know how to convert words into page count. That's it was kind of stupid of me. But since I wasn't planning to publish the book anyway, it didn't matter. It's
Yeah.
just I just wanted to write a complete book. And frankly, the guy I was writing it for died before he got to the end, which was kind of like a big tragedy for me. But I kept a picture of Howard beside my desk while I was writing just to remind me that I had this guy watching, and if I wrote a single lazy sentence, he was going to come down out of the sky and grab me.
Uh-huh.
So, anyway, I don't, yeah, by lazy sentences, Jack Spicer, the great poet, had a term for this. Called pushing wood. That's where you make automatic moves in a chess game.
Oh
If
yeah.
you
Yeah.
if you both know the opening,
Yes.
like you're going to use Roy Lopez and they're going to use a Sicilian defense, you
Hmm.
just push your pieces out to maybe the 12th move or something, and
Right.
that's
Then the
called
game really
pushing
starts.
wood in chess.
Yeah.
So when you make automatic moves in writing, you just like write sentences that just are sort of moving the narrative along to the I call that pushing wood as well. And so I don't think there's a single sentence in the book that is pushing wood. Every sentence mattered.
Yeah, for sure.
So whatever.
Yeah, Joy calls your writing style so kinetic and restless, so knowledgeable and playful and confrontational on the first page of her forward, and that comes through for sure.
Okay, now I know what she put in the forward.
Oh, you haven't read the forward?
I don't like to read things
Oh, that's hilarious.
about the book.
Yeah.
I'd
It's
rather.
flattering, so you can rest
Yeah,
assured
well,
that
I
it's
knew that I know what Joy thinks of the book because
uh-huh.
she's called me a bunch of times about it,
Yeah.
and she called me one time. I shouldn't tell stories about Joy, but she's so generous. She called me after she reread it, and with no preamble, no like, "Hi Jim, this is Joy. How you doing? What's going on?" We know each other's voices. So she just said, "How the hell did you write this?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't know. Joy, was just a lot of hard work." And she said, "No, that's not it." I said,
That's
"Well,
great.
I don't know. I guess I can't explain it then." So
Yeah.
the book happened.
It's
I
inexplicable.
was there while it happened, but you know,
Yeah.
I was along for the ride.
Uh-huh.
Well, we both absolutely love the book. I've really enjoyed rereading it, and I know if anyone picks it up and hasn't read it yet, they will find a lot to love in it. Just the writing style of Alone is so full and good and complete, and it's really a true achievement, Jim. I think you should be continue to be very proud of it. We are going to ask you to stick around and talk to our bonus subscribers on Patreon. But thank you again for your time here today. Dave, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, just thank you, Jim, for this wonderful book. We continue to celebrate it and congratulate you on the 10th anniversary. It's, yeah, like Matt said, I feel like it's just kind of, it feels like it's in its infancy in terms of people, like the breadth of discovery that's still possible for this novel. So I can't wait to see what the next 10 years brings for people coming to it and writing about it, and it continuing to be part of like the massive
Well, look,
conversation of books here.
I'm truly grateful to both of you guys, by the way, if that isn't already clear, because I seriously doubt the book would have found the audience that it found without your show. I mean,
Wow,
what
that's cool.
happened after I appeared was not just selling copies, but there was a lot more social media activity, and that's really how people buy books. Is
Hmm.
they kind of, their friends recommend them. And I mean, I the book, I thought the book might sell 300 copies, and it sold, 30 times that or something. It's sort of like, wow, how did that happen? And most novels tend to stop selling. Unfortunately, 90% of novels stop selling after their first year. So the fact that it's still selling 10 years later is, I don't know, just strikes me as, I guess, just pure luck, to be honest. The fact that Silverblatt discovered it and you guys discovered it and Joy found it, these were all just happy accidents. And I'm truly grateful to you guys, though, for your help,
Well, the pleasure is all
and
Oh
ours.
your
yeah,
push.
The
Yeah.
pleasure
and
is
we
all
even
ours.
have a Matt Booker endorsement on the back of the 10th anniversary edition too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
I
super
mean,
fun that
I
happened.
when it came time, I mean, I had to do that new edition because the old distributor had kept 1,000 copies of the book and continued to sell it. This is Ingram, by the way. I should just,
Just name them. Yeah.
I hate these guys anyway. Yeah, we were supposed to get our books back, and they kept 1,000. I mean, it was like 987 copies, and the book had a new distributor, and Ingram just kept selling it for 7 months till they sold out the copies.
Mm.
And yeah, it's like, yeah, don't get me started on Ingram and Amazon. We'll be here all day. But in any case, yeah.
Well,
Anyway, my gratitude, guys.
Well,
thank
same
you,
to you, Jim. It's our pleasure. Absolutely.
and thank you to our listeners and people who take our recommendations seriously.
Yeah.
And I would say that if you'd like to become a member of our show's program, such it is, and to get access to our bonus episodes, you can do that at patreon.com/concavity show. And we are recording all of those with our guests. So there's some bonus content there. All of our episodes are also on YouTube. The audio feed of them is.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for listening. And leave us a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That does help. And we'll be back with a new episode pretty soon.
Yeah. Thanks again, Jim Gauer. Lovely talking
Thanks,
to you,
guys.
as always.
Great fun.
Catch me now as I say